2024. What a
Bite me!
wonderful year for movies. There were a lot of great things I saw this past year, but a lot of
Can we trust you?
Don't do dumb things.
not so great. Now, I didn't see every movie in 2024. There were a lot of hits that I didn't get to see. Nonetheless, this is my list for the top 5 worst movies that I saw in 2024. K-Dog's worst review. Number 5. Joker Folie, Deux, as everyone likes to say, was a pretty big letdown for me. Similar to many others, I really enjoyed the first Joker. I thought it was a much more grounded look at a tragic character who ultimately becomes a villain. Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job and secured himself the Oscar for it. This movie was number 5 because it just really did not need to happen. I understand money was the reason for it, but my God, this movie had no direction at all. Being a musical, you thought at the very least the songs would be exciting and engaging, but they weren't. Lady Gaga has an amazing voice, but the songs themselves were just boring. It did not serve the story in any way, shape, or form. The choreography wasn't exciting. They weren't set in elaborate sets at all. The movie just looked very dull and gross. And ultimately, the plot really went nowhere. In watching the movie, you could really tell they never had any intention of making this. It seemed very forced and rushed, and ultimately led to a deuce. Number 4. After seeing this movie, I felt like I was bamboozled. I wanted my money back. Shyamalan proved to me once again that he had one great movie over 20 years ago and has been riding the coattails of that ever since. The acting was terrible. The dialogue was awful. The story was very lackluster with a bunch of holes in it. And I really just felt like I was watching a commercial for M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, who's a fine singer. But really, once we hit the second and third act of the movie, she lingers and she becomes a major part of it. And she was not a good actress at all. I really felt similar to Joker 2 with this one. Instead of a story being presented to me, I was being sold something. Sold on an artist/actress's career that I have absolutely no intention of following. All of his movies are kind of fun to watch just because they're so bad. Everything is just so awkward. The way people interact with each other and carry about themselves, the zoomed in camera angles on people's faces, the motivations, the weird twists and turns, they just feel so weird. There really is no other word to describe his movies other than awkward. Everything about this movie fell flat. I'm sure in a year or two, his next movie will be included on my lists, and I'll be Shyamalan once again. Number 3. Werewolves 2024. I kind of knew this movie was going to be bad. I really wouldn't have put it on this list if it hadn't assaulted my senses. This movie is filled with an alarming amount of flashing lights and pumping music like you're in a club. They really should have had one of those epilepsy warnings before showing this, because my God, this movie literally gave me a headache. Not the bad acting, not the ripoff of The Purge storytelling. No, the flashing lights. I literally couldn't look at the camera during several sequences. It is a solid 5 to 10 minutes. You know, the low budget stuff like the bad lighting or the camera being out of focus is kind of charming in a movie like this, but the assault on my senses really gives it the number 3 spot for this year. I had a lot of fun with this one, but if a movie is going to physically hurt me, I'm not interested in watching it ever again. Number 2. Now, similar to Werewolves, there was a lot wrong with this movie. However, this movie actually had a budget and was made by a major studio, so it really had no excuse. This movie was bad. I mean, I have never seen a villain as terrible as the guy that was in this. The ADR for that guy was the worst I've ever seen. He barely looked at the camera. All of his audio sounded re-recorded, he really didn't do anything as a major villain and had a kind of terrible plan for killing our protagonists. The acting in this movie, similar to Trap, is very awkward. Our main characters have zero chemistry with one another. Our lead superhero that we are following is horribly boring. And similar to other Spider-Man villain movies, this one feels incredibly forced and inconsequential. We did get characters being hit by cars multiple times in this, though, which was pretty funny. This movie really had the ickiness of studio meddling. Forced early 2000s pop references, forced line callbacks from earlier comic books and movies, and once again, passionless shit. I really hope Sony ups their game. I certainly don't expect it, but there are a plethora of great characters and stories to pull from that they have access to. They really just need to take a step back from the committees of what makes the most money and just realize what makes a good movie a good movie. A compelling story with interesting characters that we like to follow. Number 1. This movie pissed me off. I think it was mostly because I had watched the original Strangers from 2008 prior to watching this. I really shouldn't have, because it's literally the same exact movie. The characters are essentially the same. Everything that happens in this movie, the kills, everything is basically exactly the same with a 2024 modern twist to it, which is silly because the original came out in 2008, not even that long ago. The horrible acting, the forced product placements.
Ali shows our funds came through.
Where even are we right now?
And the need to feel epic, like you're calling back to something great. I mean, it's cringy when it happens in other IPs as well, but The Strangers? Part 1 in your title? Do we really think that many people are going to want to come back for Part 2? Oh, and the decisions our characters make in this movie are just downright stupid. In a home invasion movie like this, you really need to have smart characters that you sympathize with. Because in movies like this, you really put yourself in that person's position. What would I do if people were invading my home? Where would I try and hide? What things would I try and grab as maybe weapons or ways to contact authorities? And so you need characters with some semblance of a brain. But in this movie, it just felt like every decision they made was in service of getting to the next jump scare. Terrible characters that I didn't connect with in service of a franchise that I don't really care for. The twisted marketing to make us believe that this was some sort of backstory to the original characters, and the fact that it had barely anything original in it, makes The Strangers Part 1 my worst movie of 2024. Please let me know your top 5 worst movies in the comments below. How did yours differ from mine? As always, till next time.